knowing what you have is a big deal, and knowing what's out there and what isn't out there too. That's a key too, what isn't available. So sometimes it's not always what is available that can help with value. It's what isn't available.
Welcome to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owners Association, where real estate investors have found success since 1968. I'm your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group. This episode is sponsored by Green Property Management, managing everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area. Find out more at greenpropertymgt.com. And RCB and Associates, helping real estate investors and small business owners navigate the complex world of health insurance and Medicare benefits at rcbassociatesllc.com. Hello and welcome to episode 413. Owning waterfront property is the dream of many real estate investors, but buying and selling waterfront property is very different than your typical real estate transaction. Tia Lilly is the founder of Property Cape Cod Real Estate. Tia is a seasoned real estate professional with almost 2 decades of experience specializing in all types of waterfront properties on Cape Cod, including waterfront, water view, lake, pond, riverfront, and beachfront properties. She understands that selling a waterfront property differs from a traditional home sale, but this fact is not widely known. Today, Tia is going to walk us through all the things we need to consider when it comes to buying or selling waterfront property. Tia, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Brian. I appreciate you having me.
I was looking forward to this conversation because I have some waterfront property, rental property, and I'm looking at building on other waterfront property. But what I found is it's very hard to value these types of properties because you're taking into account waterfront, which doesn't necessarily have a price tag on it. So you have to sort of see what the market will bear as far as I've been able to tell. But I'm wondering what, you've been specializing in this for such a long time. Kind of take us through it. What are we talking about when we're talking about waterfront property?
We're talking about quite a bit, and your situation is a little unique where you're building. So it's something new, but typically with a structure existing, like we look at it, I think you're on Lake Michigan, right?
The properties I'm talking about are on Lake Michigan and either in Traverse City or North Muskegon.
Right. So here, like Cape Cod, for anyone, a lot of people know Cape Cod, some don't. It's a resort destination here where people are drawn to our beaches and our lakes and the ocean and boating. And it's just so many variables of water here, rivers, and they're all come in different shapes and sizes and connect to different parts of the ocean. So we have the bay side, we have the ocean side. So, I mean, right there alone, I can speak. It's hard for me on the Lake Michigan, I don't know, but to Cape Cod, there's just so many different varieties of water. So when somebody says, oh, I want a waterfront, or I want to sell my waterfront property, or I want to buy a waterfront, first we have to look at the water. What does that water do? What is it? How do people use the water? Is it boating? Is it beach? And their value will come from there. So that's one part where you start. And then there's a lot of different rules and regulations, as I'm sure you have on Lake Michigan as well, anything near water. So those need to be considered in part of the sale process as well, and to be aware of it so there's no surprises.
Tia, can you kind of walk us through that process then? Because and actually maybe we should just take a step back and you can just kind of help us track like what you do and how you interface with the waterfront property as a realtor or broker and the type of properties you typically help people buy or sell.
Well, there's actually a variety. And, I've been listening to a lot of your podcasts because you work a lot with investing. Well, anything in real estate, right, is an investment. But so it depends. We have people that come to us a lot that want to, what I get excited about for people in terms of investment, we'll just go there for 1 second, is it's such a great opportunity to invest in real estate and have fun with it, build equity, and utilize it as a vacation rental. So it generates revenue. It's exciting. The key is getting the right property though. So that's a huge key in what will derive the best rental revenue for you. So that's one aspect. And more people are finding us for that venue.
So you work with a lot of short-term rental or vacation rental type investors who are looking for that waterfront property that they can rent out.
We do. And we have a rental division, a vacation rental division specifically for that as well. So we're full service on that. So, I mean, our ideal client is the one that's out of state that wants to come in and enjoy their house a few weeks out of the year, want it to be their own, but want this home to be an investment in terms of more than just appreciating in equity, but have it generate revenue. And we just see everything through everything. Like we take care of the house like it's our own house and drop a check into their account once a month during season. Winter, we close it down though here. Very quiet in the winter on Cape Cod.
Yeah, I can imagine, but very busy during the summer. We were just there not too long ago, and it's a beautiful area and a really amazing beachfront.
What town did you stay in?
We stayed on the mainland in Plymouth, where Plymouth Rock is, but we did travel out to Nantucket.
Yes, so you were in Nantucket.
Yeah, I wanted to drive the whole Cape. And for those who aren't familiar, when you say Cape Cod and they all they picture is Jaws, kind of describe where Cape Cod is and what we're talking about.
The tip of Massachusetts. It's a peninsula, so it's connected by two bridges. You could travel over the Sagamore Bridge or the Bourne Bridge to get there, and it's comprised of 15 towns. And a lot of people think of it as like an arm. So if you look at your arm, you have the upper, you have the lower, mid, and outer Cape. So it's outer Cape would be like all the way to Provincetown. Everyone knows Provincetown, and then Upper Cape was when you first come over the bridge, and then there's everything in between, and they're all different. It's actually quite spectacular. So where you were on Nantucket. So we have Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard.
I wasn't on Nantucket. I don't know why. It was Provincetown. We went to Provincetown. Yeah, we took the ferry to Provincetown.
Provincetown's a lot of fun.
It was very eye-opening. My kids loved it.
Oh, I'm sure they did. It's kind of similar to Key West, right? So it's got a lot of similarities to Key West, but it's fantastic. Tons of shopping and excellent restaurants.
People probably are familiar with Cape Cod and like Martha's Vineyard. And they shot Jaws on Martha's Vineyard, although they made up a fictional city called Amity, I think was the name of the city.
But you're so right. I hadn't thought about that when you said Jaws, but a lot of people do think.
Let's talk about just the buying and selling of waterfront property then. I mean, where do you start? If someone calls you and says, hey, I want to buy waterfront property, how do you narrow it down for them?
Well, we start at the beginning, and a lot of it is like, I always encourage people to kind of look at it with the end in mind, so to speak, because it can change. But how do you see yourself using this property? Let's like dive into that. And then what do you like to do? Because I can typically tell with what their interests are. I've been doing this. I built my agency on buyer agency originally. So working with buyers to help them find their vacation home. So it's really because based on their interests and how they want to use the water, like, are you a boater? Do you like to go to the beach? How do you walk to the beach? Also, budget's going to factor into that. Like, what are they looking to what do they have budgeted for this home? And that can kind of start to play out as far as like what would be the best fits from. It's all great. People ask me all the time, where's the best place? It just depends on anything near on water. You can't go wrong. So it's interest. Do you want to be near activities? Do you want to be quieter? So.
And what affects the price? Like what would make waterfront more valuable and what would make it less valuable?
Anything on water is definitely valuable, but it's depends on how you can use the water. And the most expensive on Cape Cod typically would be beachfront. Anything that has any type of beachfront. And then the factors to think about, do you own the beach in front of you? Or is that just you own to the edge? So there's different variables.
On Cape Cod, can you own the beach?
Yes.
So it's like in Michigan, the Lake Michigan, I think a lot of that beach is public. Like you can't ownership over that.
And on the Cape, some of it is public and some it is private owned. So is that important to you at all? That privacy aspect. So it's really kind of getting in. And a lot of times I find the process changes. So you have to go, like I always encourage my clients, don't feel bad. Let's go look at them. You have to go out and see them. And then you think you want something and it can change directions. Some people know and it doesn't. It's like, this is the house, this is the one. But others I've worked with for years and it changes directions. It's okay, we want this. We got to look at them to see. So beachfront, a lot of people are looking for pools now. So they want waterfront with a pool. And some want a waterfront with a pool and a deep water dock. So now you have various levels of dock. So if you say to me, Brian, hey, look, my family and I, we love boating. We want a dock. I'm going to have to now ask you questions about that boat because does that boat, the draft, how big is the boat? What draft does it need? Because you don't want to be all excited about a house and you get there and you find out you can't get your boat out to the main ocean because it's got to go through tides or so forth. So what does boating look like to you? It's different for everybody. So some people are out in the main ocean, traveling to Martha's Vineyard in Nantucket and wherever. Others are, for example, I like to boat in Bass River. I put around Bass River in my boat. So it all depends on what that is. So that's a big piece of it because people look, and is the dock licensed? So just because it has a dock, did maybe the owner put it in 10 years ago under the radar and it never went through the proper channels to be licensed? So these are all things that to just so there's no surprises.
Is there some regulatory agency that if you wanted to put in your own dock or seawall or anything that you would have to go through a process to get that approved?
It's quite a process, actually. And it starts with hiring an engineer, and then it has to go through the town approval, and then it goes through the state approval. So all in all, it can take about a year to get approved. That's if everything goes well. So sometimes just because you're looking at a property that doesn't have a dock, but to the right and left of the property, they do have docks, does not mean you'll get a dock on that property. They have to do surveys. They survey for shellfish. They survey for these species. They have all kinds of surveys it's got to pass to even get to the next level.
So you really have to be aware when you're buying waterfront property, and not just in Cape Cod, but anywhere. Like, what are the regulatory agencies? What are the hoops you're going to have to jump through to maybe put improvements in or do what you want to do? Do you have any stories of people who have bought waterfront property and then realized, oh, wow, this isn't anything like what I thought I could make it?
I've read a lot of stories and I read a lot of state case studies on it. And I've heard a lot of stories, but I really try to be proactive. So my client is never, ever in that situation. So when they buy something, they know what they can and can't do before they buy it. So there's no surprises. So there's a lot of due diligence done.
How do you accomplish that? Like, tell us about the due diligence you do on these properties.
Oh, it's so boring, but I'm happy to share it. It's actually, to me, it's not. But like, I started the town departments. I started the registry of deeds. So a lot of times I do preliminary. I let them all know I'm not an attorney. I'm not, but I can go through, you do this long enough, look for outstanding orders or look for orders of conditions that are recorded there to see if they have to keep up with anything. This is something that maybe the town will say, look, you have to plant X amount of plants every single spring. So, you want to look for anything that's there, and that would be recorded. So I go through all the town departments. I go through conservation. I talk to someone in conservation to get their take on the property too, and just make sure what I'm reading, I understand. So when I do send over this information to my clients, that I can explain it well to them. So they at least know what can and can't be done. And same for the sell side too, when you're listing. Because this way you can add value to the property to get the seller the best dollar value at the best terms too, if you understand what you have.
Give us an example of how you would add value that way.
let's just take, like, since we were talking about a dock, for example. So I do the due diligence. So let's say I have something, so I'm listing a property on the river, deep water dock. I do my preliminary homework to make sure that that dock is licensed and in good standing. This is also something that you can advertise and you can talk about in your showings, because if anybody's looking around, they probably have come through a few docks that aren't. So this are not always, or maybe somebody added on to their dock and they weren't supposed to, or, so it can be very important to know that you have a legitimate deep water dock that is all on the up and approved. That I think there's value there for sure.
How much, let's say it's not, and you're working with the seller, how much would they typically need to spend to bring it up to code or whatever? And how much would that yield?
It depends on where it is, the town, the location. So I think a lot of that is factoring that into your price and knowing that is going to also, because look, somebody that does their due diligence, you want to know things ahead of time. You don't want to negotiate a price. Now you're in the middle of the sale and now this comes up and now they're going to try to, have my client reduce the price substantially to go forward. So you want to just, even if they don't want to update it, you just want that information up front so there's no surprises and the sale runs through smoothly. That's my philosophy anyways. Sometimes you can get it up to date, but it's a long process.
I'd like to take a moment to tell you about Green Property Management. Not only do they manage everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area, they also manage my entire portfolio. So I can tell you from personal experience that their unique flat fee management style is worth a closer look. If you feel that your property isn't operating to its fullest potential, then Green Property Management can help you take a holistic approach that will save you money, eliminate your headaches, and increase your net income. And if you're a property manager interested in applying Green Property Management's model, give them a call at 1-866-95-GREEN or visit them on the web at greenpropertymgt.com.
If you're thinking of leaving your W-2 job and becoming a full-time real estate investor, one of the greatest costs you must consider is healthcare for you and your family. When I made this transition myself, I found the whole healthcare insurance process to be confusing and frustrating. That's why I'm glad I met Chad Creasy at RCB and Associates. Chad is a professional health insurance agent who helps real estate investors and small business owners understand and choose their best healthcare options. And best of all, his services are covered by the insurance company and won't cost you a dime. If you live in Michigan and are expecting a change in your healthcare insurance coverage for any reason, or losing employer coverage or transitioning into Medicare, then you owe it to yourself to contact Chad Creasy at rcbassociatesllc.com. You do work with investors who want to buy a vacation rental property on Cape Cod. Can you talk about that process? Like, and give us some examples of actual numbers. Like, if I came to you and said, okay, I want to buy a property on Cape Cod that I can visit once or, for 1 or 2 weeks out of the year, but then rent out the rest of the time and make a profit.
And make some money. Yeah.
Yeah. What would you tell me? And what process would you take me through?
Well, first of all, when you said I want to make a profit, we'd start there, because what does that look like to you? A lot of it is, are you taking a mortgage? Are you paying cash for the property? I'll give you an example. Right now, I'm working with a couple guys that are selling a New York property. So they're going to do a 1031 exchange. And they're selling their New York property for substantial money. It will be over a couple million. And so they don't want to get taxed on this money. So I said, hey, they're like, what do you think? I said, let's, this is a way that they can generate income. So they're going to sell New York, buy a Cape property just strictly for rental. So I'm going to say, like, for them, properties that I'm looking at will generate a couple $100,000 a year for them, once we get it really going, between $200,000 and $300,000 a year. So it depends on what your numbers, and then they'll have expenses, of course, but they'll probably net between $150,000 and $200,000.
And will that be before, will they have any sort of debt on it, or are they just paying cash?
They're going to do a 1031. So they're doing cash. So, and then they'll gain. And so here's the thing. When you look at it, because I have somebody else that recently approached me that was all about turning a profit. So some of them will and some of them won't. And the profit it turns was nothing substantial at first, but it's covering your costs. But where you really, really make the investment, the gain is in the equity when you go to sell. It always goes up unless you're selling short term. I've always advised don't buy to sell within 5 years. But
if you hold it long enough, it'll go
hold
up.
it long enough. We had a couple that we worked with for. They bought a house strictly for that. They bought it for $2.2 million. We generated over $200,000 a year in rental revenue. And last year we sold it so they had it 5 years. We rented it. They sold it for $4.4 million. And that was a 5 year. And I mean, that was a little unique because of COVID, definitely unique. But even without COVID, they would have still made a decent profit.
And if they were selling it now, would they have made as much of a profit, or have values gone down because of higher interest rates?
See, in my opinion, this is where I probably differ a little bit. I don't think it depends on how you look at the values. I don't see them going down on the Cape at all. Will people have to get more realistic about their prices? That's what's going to look like out to the public. And when we start coming out, they're going to, the Cape's down. But is it really down? We just appreciated over 10 years and a couple years. Like the prices went crazy. So I think people are going to have to be more realistic. But they're still at a much higher. They're still doing very well. I don't know if that makes sense, but
going back to the 1031 exchange and your clients who are doing that, I want to bring up something that one of my previous guests, Dave Foster, who's a 1031 exchange expert, said that really stuck with me, and that is you can buy your dream home through a 1031 exchange, and as long as you rent it out, I can't remember if it's 1 year or 2 years. You can then move into it and take possession of it.
I think it's a couple years. Yeah. And then you can, yep, exactly. Yeah. And you can enjoy it still too and have vacations.
Yeah, you can still vacation there, rent it out as a rental. And then after 2 years, you can move into it. You did a 1031 exchange into your dream home.
Yeah. Or keep it and just have a vacation home and still rent it. I mean, there's so many options. That's why I think it's exciting. I know you're more in the multifamily. Yeah, multifamily apartments and things like that. I mean, Cape is small here, so it's more vacation destination, but it's so much fun because where can you invest and make money and have like a nice vacation? You can't do that with stock market or in your 401k or it's great.
And I'm not going to vacation at Apple or Tesla.
Oh, no, exactly. So
getting back to the investment opportunity. So really, this is like you're doing higher end vacation rentals on Cape Cod. Typically, what I'm hearing you say is that your clients are buying with cash.
A lot of cash these days.
I mean, are there loans do you typically see them leverage debt through loans that are available for that type of property?
Definitely. That's a little bit more challenging though right now with the rates up. So I think a lot of people are thinking, and I still think it's great to do it. You just got to find the right property. Rates will go back down again. I believe they will anyways, maybe later next year or something, but I think they're going to go down, and then you refinance at that point. But the properties are still going to go up, the good ones, so to speak, good locations.
Since you manage, or your company manages, short-term rental or vacation rentals on Waterfront, what are some of the expenses that you need to pro forma when you buy waterfront property?
That you don't incur, like you got to look at flood, you got to look at insurance. Even if there's some waterfront properties that do not have, they're not in the flood zone because they've been elevated out, but it's still good to talk to your insurance agent about that. And also you'll so you have the insurance, you have maintenance. It will take a little bit more on the maintenance end of it on the water. You just got the winds, and it depends where on the water. There's some that are sheltered. You do have to take care of your dock. Usually you pull that in and pull that out, or have something in place that protects it throughout the winter. So these are some other expenses, and it's really not a lot. It depends on how the winter we get, though, as far as the maintenance to the outside. That needs to be done more often to homes.
Do you get some pretty harsh winters on Cape Cod?
In comparison to the rest of the country, no. They've been pretty mild overall. It's more our winds. It depends the way the wind blows. So sometimes the windstorms, like no one will hear about it, and we'll have more damage on a windstorm than any other storm that is broadcasted on the news. So it's more, I think, our winds. You do have erosion, but
you talked about floods and insurance, and I'm wondering, like, is Cape Cod prone to hurricanes at all? And what kind of insurance rates are you seeing, and especially changes in insurance costs?
We've been fortunate, really fortunate, and I'm not real great with how, I don't even know how to explain it, but because of where we're positioned here on the Cape and because of the water, we have had hurricanes, but I'm not a knock on wood, I just we're pretty lucky. I think it's how we're positioned here. So we do get storms, don't get me wrong, but we haven't seen, my heart breaks around the world, all these catastrophes with weather. And I just think all the time, how lucky are we? We don't really have to deal with anything major. It's really more the wind. I think the way the wind blows, you can have a rough year if the wind's blowing a certain direction that no one would even think that would affect our homes and our beaches. But yeah. And insurance wise, I didn't answer that question. So insurance wise, no, we're not seeing, I know I've had some conversations with Florida, for example, people in Florida that work there. There are a lot of insurance agents are pulling out. I think they're going under. I've heard and read a little bit about that. We aren't seeing that here at all. I always recommend local insurance companies on the Cape. They are awesome, and they have very competitive rates, and they're there for you if you need them. So we have some great insurance agents that we work with. And prices are competitive, very competitive.
I want to talk about other areas, and I'll give you specifically, the areas that I have in Michigan. So one, we have 240 foot of beachfront on a vacation rental resort in North Muskegon. And when we valued it based on the cabins and the houses that were located on this land and the acreage that was there. I'm sure that the location and being on the beachfront added value to it, but it was really hard to put a number on that. So I'm wondering, what do you typically do or see done when it comes to looking at beachfront property? And I realize you're focused on Cape Cod, but in other areas, what would you advise as far as putting a number on what that beachfront is worth?
Think about it this way. So if you took those cabins and those properties that you valued, right, and you pick them up and you put them somewhere away from the water. Let's just say in Michigan, somewhere in central where there's not, you have to drive to get to the beach. I would, how much, what's the value of that when you put it in there?
Yeah, let's say the value goes down by 40%.
Tremendously. It's all about location. It's just location. So I would always say you're not valuing. It's not even so much the cabinets. That's amazing, that property. I just get excited to hear it. So it sounds spectacular. So that is how big is it again? How many acres?
I want to say we've got 12 to 14 acres, 7 cabins, 3 houses. And, it's all kind of rectangular, and you can walk right down to the beach. It's on a bluff, so you have to go down a set of stairs to get there. But I've wondered and just played around with the thought, well, we bought it as a vacation rental resort, so we paid based on net operating income. What are the cabins bringing in? But if we were to just say, you know what, we're just going to sell the land with the beachfront, would that actually be worth more than what it is as a commercial property?
It might, but you have versatility there. So it depends on your buyer. It depends on the buyer. So you have a lot of versatility. So you can market it as just, hey, you can do not whatever you want, but within reason through the rules, right? Because that's prime. That's like the best that you can get with beach water. It doesn't get any better than that. So you have the location. No, it doesn't. So the location's superb. So that's really where your high value comes in. And then you have producing cabins on there that, so somebody could come in and just take over, or maybe they can add. I don't know out there, but it sounds like you've got a lot of acreage. So that's amazing. So somebody might come in and want to buy something like that and build more, or tear down and build something different that, who knows? I don't know the laws or what can and can't be done there, but it sounds like there's tons of potential, like of what could or could not, what you could do there. So, but it's all about, like, if you pick that up and took it somewhere else, it doesn't have that much value. I mean, it's valuable, but not that much. So you have something very special, very special.
Well, I think it also has to do with who you choose to broker it for you. Because if you look at it one way, you could say, well, this is just based on the value of the properties and the acreage and the net operating income. But if you found someone like yourself who really understood the value of waterfront property and had a pool of buyers who were looking for, specifically for waterfront property, it seems like there would be a difference in the type of buyer and price that you'd be able to get.
I appreciate you saying that, because that is so true. I do look at some homes that come up on the water and I just shake my head and think, why did they, even if it's not me, hire somebody? We have others too here. I'm not the only one. There's some great agents that know what they're doing on the water, but hire somebody that knows what your water value is worth, because that you're right, would come in and just say, oh, well, they're cabins or whatever. And so knowing what you have, it's a big deal, and knowing what's out there and what isn't out there too. That's a key too. What isn't available. So sometimes it's not always what is available that can help with value. It's what isn't available.
Hey, explain that. What do you mean by that?
Well, meaning I'm going to guess that no one else has what you have. I don't know Lake Michigan, but is there any comps out there or anywhere that anything have sold? Does anybody have 14 acres of land with 7 cabins?
Not quite that. No, I mean, there's vacant land that you could look at the acreage and their frontage and what they're getting for that. There's a lot of residential, homes, very few resort type properties out there, if any. Wow. There's a few.
Right. But right there tells you a lot. So you have a resort type property that nobody else has. So you're only selling to one buyer. That's it. Well, maybe a couple investors, who knows, but it's one party that's going to buy that property. And that for somebody, because I've heard Lake Michigan's spectacular. I've never had the opportunity to go, but that would be very valuable to somebody that's looking for that type of property.
Yeah, amazing beaches. I'll give a plug for it. If you want to check it out and you're looking for an awesome vacation place to stay with a group, you can go to bookdreamstay.com. Check it out. It's bookdreamstay.com. I don't normally plug myself on the podcast, but
I'm gonna check it out. Yeah.
Check it out. There's a number of properties on there, but look for Scenic Drive Resort. It's an amazing property. Tia, what is your favorite hack or app?
The 2 apps that I more live on are my MLS. I'm always on the MLS app, constantly just seeing if anything, what's going on, what's new, what reduced in price, what's gone under contract. So I live on that all day long. And the other app is our CRM app. So I'm in there a bit as well too.
And what do you use for your CRM?
KV Core.
You're pretty happy with that?
I mean, overall, yeah. I mean, it's really challenging for us and for any CRM. So if anybody is in a CRM, it's not, KV Core's been great. They really are trying to up their product. They just bought out a big company, but because we're seasonal, we're specialized. It's hard when you're in a resort. So it's in a resort destination. We're very personal with what we do, and everything's so specific. And a lot of the CRMs are kind of meant for like that cookie cutter kind of area. So we do have that challenge, but that's with anyone. So they've been overall great though.
How would people find out more about you or get a hold of you or even just see the listings that you have?
Thanks for asking. Cod.com is where you can find us. Again, that's propertycapecod.com. And go check out like our podcast offers we have on there in the menu in the top right. We do have podcasts. If you want to subscribe to my magazine, you can get that for free. That comes out every other month, and just a lot of good information, more on water too, living on the water's edge guide. So there's some different offers there. But yes, propertycapecod.com. Thank you so much, Brian.
Yeah, well, thank you, Tia. It's been a pleasure talking with you about waterfront property. Yeah, it's very different from non-waterfront property, and I think you've done a great job kind of explaining how and why and things to look for, and then answering some of my personal questions. I really appreciate that.
I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for being on the show.
Thanks.
I want to thank everybody for listening to this episode. I'm your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group, and you can find out more about me by going to higinvestor.com. That's higinvestor.com. And you can also ask questions and join us on Facebook by going to RPOA, Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast. This episode was sponsored by Green Property Management, managing everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area. Find out more at greenpropertymgt.com. And RCB and Associates, helping real estate investors and small business owners navigate the complex world of health insurance and Medicare benefits at rcbassociatesllc.com.
You've been listening to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association. You can find out more at rpoaonline.org. If you enjoyed this podcast, please go to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and review.